I watched one particular program of the Security Council meeting where the Israeli spokesperson was about to start speaking and very theatrically put a yellow star on. And it made me feel sick because it was a misuse of the Holocaust.
What would you want them to do next now? What would you be saying?
With somebody who actually had to wear a yellow star.
Yeah.
This was a misused symbolism.
The man you just heard from is 88-year-old Holocaust survivor Stephen Kapos, and he's stating that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. So we'll show you a lot more of that very powerful interview in just a moment. But first, Cenk, I want to know what you thought of the whole interview, because what struck me was the candor of a man who has no political agenda. He's just calling something out for what it so clearly is, and he understands that no one can really argue with him.
Yeah, believe me, Netanyahu will call him an anti-Semite. Look, guys, I start talking about, it's a goofy titling or whatever, but a Jewish rebellion against what was happening in Gaza a couple of months ago. And you're seeing it more and more. More Jews across the world coming out saying, no, not in my name. I didn't sign up for this. This is exactly what we're against, right? But it doesn't get any more powerful than a guy like Stephen Kapos, who actually went through the Holocaust and lost his dad in the Holocaust. And he told a really heartbreaking story about it. We'll come back and I'll tell you more about it in a little bit. And he has the moral authority, etc., to be able to say, no, not in our name. This is disgusting. This is not what we're in favor of. So I appreciate him so much. And by the way, the people say it's not your place to talk about other religions. Yeah, I know. I'm past it. Okay, I'm going to say it. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to try to stop this genocide. So if you're Jewish out there, wherever you are in the world, go thank people like Stephen Kapos. Not just because he's a Holocaust survivor, of course, and what an amazing man and story, but because without guys like him out there saying the moral thing, and the anti-Semitism would be just an inferno right now all across the world, an inferno. It would be unbelievable. It's guys like Kapos who are reminding people, no, this isn't about Jews. This is about a government. This is about a government. Look at these wonderful Jewish Americans, Jewish British people, Jewish people from all over the world, Israeli citizens, saying, no, this is not about the religion, and we don't agree. So thank God he's here to tell that story. A lot more about him, and I want to get everybody to weigh in a minute, but tell us more about the story, Yaz.
Okay, so earlier in the interview, Kapos pointed out what's happening in Gaza and how it's so similar to the Holocaust, as well as why Israel's objectives don't actually match their actions.
What goes on in Gaza is absolutely horrendous for me. And in lots of ways, the sufferings of the Palestinian people rhymes with the suffering that we had gone on there. You do not free hostages by bombing. That's absolutely clear to everybody. And I think, I don't know the details of Israeli politics, but apparently it's more to do with his own survival politically.
All right, so later Kapos stated that the media and the West are both responsible for enabling Israel's actions.
You do have concerns, don't you, that internationally not enough attention is being paid to what's going on, or not enough being said about it?
That's true, and particularly, I think the whole of West is guilty in a way in not opposing this decisively and strongly enough, particularly the mass media. That has been, if you like, lying by omission in not...
By not giving enough coverage?
Yes, by not giving enough coverage, and by the way they give coverage also at times. For example, taking Israeli statements unchallenged as sometimes as truthful. Where is their record?
Okay, and finally, let's hear Kapos. He slams Netanyahu for stating never again is now.
And as for Netanyahu, not long ago, he made a statement, I think at Yad Vashem, to say that never again is now. And this is another clear reference to the Holocaust and misuse of the Holocaust, because those who actually experienced it never again means something else. It means that never again perpetrating anything like that on any people anywhere.
All right, so I just want to mention real quick that leaked Israeli intelligence just came out, and the Israeli data shows that 83% of Gaza war dead are civilians, and that really, how does that possibly justify anything that's happening in Gaza right now? If their excuse is that it's all about Hamas and trying to find Hamas, 83%, and that is according to leaked Israeli intelligence. So, Michael, I'll start with you this time. As I mentioned earlier, who can argue with this man? Not Netanyahu, but he's going to, as Cenk pointed out, right? Like, because they have to stay on message. And elsewhere in the interview, I don't think we showed this clip, but the man did say, it does seem like Netanyahu has more of a political agenda here than anything. He has to do this, and he has to continue to do this to stay in power the way he wants to stay in power. And yeah, we all know that, but it's so much more powerful coming from this man who is a Holocaust survivor, who survived the actual Nazis and has lived long enough to now see what Israel has become. He also stated that he himself was never a Zionist. He was a Hungarian Jew, I believe, at the time of the war. And they were never really into like Israel and the Zionist movement and things like that. So he also has a bit more kind of an outsider perspective, at least as far as Israel is concerned. So Michael, what did you make of this interview?
I mean, it's moving, and the thing that, and he did allude a little bit as to some of what you just said when he was talking about Netanyahu. This is about a murderer. This is about a madman. This is about a war criminal. This is about some of the ugliest things, and getting caught in the semantics of it doesn't matter. It's what his government, the people with whom he surrounds himself, are doing to innocent civilians. Like you said, 82%, and that's by Israeli numbers, which just tells you a lot about that. And I think the most poignant thing he said was talking about Netanyahu being in front of Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Museum in Israel, and talking about never again, which is this, this turn of phrase, this saying that Jews have been taught forever since the Holocaust, to never have this repeated. And I think what he did to me, better than anything else he said there, because you can argue over who's to blame. I think equating the media with the governments around the world is not really fair, to be honest. Yes, the media could be doing a better job, but it's the American government most specifically that is doing the most to facilitate what's going on there, wittingly or unwittingly. But at this point, you have to say wittingly. Trump talked about Canada becoming the 51st state. Israel is already the 51st state, so that Canada could only become the 52nd if Trump were to annex them. But getting back to the point, is it never again? Can we allow anyone to do this to another people? Whatever word you want to say. I don't care if you call it genocide or don't call it genocide. That doesn't matter. This is murder. And you don't do that to another people in the way that they are waging this war in Gaza right now. And I think that by saying that Netanyahu was saying never again can we let this happen to the Jews, that's not what never again means to most Jews. I'm one of them. I always thought we could never let that happen to anybody. And this sort of the way Netanyahu sees it, it's all only about the Jewish people. No, they lived it, so they can say, let's not do this to anybody else. This isn't just about doing it to Jews.
Yeah, look, I think Kapos' point about the media is an interesting one and a hard one, because I understand what Michael's saying. On the other hand, and I'll use a harsh example here, were we supposed to run all of the German government statements during World War II? And under this form of media, we would. We'd go, and the Nazis say that there are no concentration camps, and the Nazis say that they haven't killed anyone. They invaded the Sudetenland for self-defense and the protection of the German minorities there.
But that was run. I mean,
they probably, I get it. They did say that, but all of that was lies, and it didn't help.
Right.
It didn't get to the truth. Okay, so now to the main point. Look, so he explained what happened to his family when the Germans came into Hungary. Things obviously got much worse, but they weren't great to begin with. But they got much worse. They made all the Jews wear a yellow star, and then they made them live in houses that had yellow stars on them, so it was clear where they were, right? And then they said, we're gonna move you, but don't worry, it's gonna be okay. No, they moved his dad and killed him. And so that's when they got to a point where they had to go hide in the woods because they knew that's it, they're gonna kill us all. And so it's a heartbreaking story. And then as you see the kids, starving in Gaza, there's haunting parallel. And so, look, I mentioned earlier all the wonderful Jews across the world who have spoken out. I can give you a laundry list of 1 million people: Peter Beinart, Jon Stewart, Dave Smith, Bernie Sanders, but 1 million more, right? But I wanted to point out a couple people that you might not know about. Leader of the Warsaw uprising. Now this is not about the Gaza situation, but earlier said, and it's going to lead to a clip I want to show you guys. Said back then, don't do it. If you form Israel, then we're going to turn into a government. We're going to turn into instead of it being about a religion and a people, it's going to turn into about a government, and governments hold power, and that becomes problematic, etc. He was so right. He's been written out of Israel's history in a lot of ways, but he was super brave in doing the revolt in Warsaw, obviously, and survived it, etc. In 1967, an Israeli professor warned, and I keep forgetting the name of this great documentary, maybe one of you guys remind me of, that of the former Shin Bet leaders and others who were saying the occupation's basically destroying our moral core. And in 67, a professor in Israel said, we've got to end the occupation as quickly as possible, because if we don't, we're going to wind up becoming the oppressors and having a culture of oppression. Oh my God, it's hauntingly true, unfortunately, these days. And finally, that brings me to my favorite author, Yuval Harari. He wrote *Sapiens*. If you haven't read it, you should definitely read it. Best book I've ever read. And he's also an Israeli. And he made a really interesting, trenchant observation about Judaism and Israel. Take a look.
October the 7th, 2023 till now. Where does that fit? Is it footnote or chapter in the sweep of Jewish history?
I think it's could be one of the biggest turning points in Jewish history. What we are facing is the potential of an ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza and the West Bank, resulting in the expulsion of 2 million, maybe more Palestinians from there, the establishment of Greater Israel, the disintegration of Israeli democracy, and the creation of a new Israel, which is based on an ideology of Jewish supremacy and on the worship of what were completely anti-Jewish values for the last 2 millennia. A country based on the worship of power and violence, and which is militarily strong. It will survive. It will be militarily strong, and this will be the spiritual disaster, because this will be the new Judaism.
Yeah, well, I'm deeply worried about it, and I don't want that to be the new face of Judaism. That sounds disastrous. So, look, I'm not Jewish, so I have a concern about it in general, but my sense of it is not only do they need to end Gaza immediately what they're doing in Gaza and withdraw, get to a ceasefire, get the hostages back and leave, but they've got to end the occupation immediately. They got to go to a 2-state solution. If they do not, I think that Israel becomes more and more hated and then more and more militaristic. I don't know where it ends, but I can't imagine that it ends anything but disaster. So Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, look, Harari is a compelling guy. I haven't read *Sapiens*, but I've heard him speak a lot. He's a compelling guy. He's a voice that's being heard now, thankfully, more in Israel than he was before all of this. I'm, more optimistic about where things will go than he is, but he's probably more informed about it, and he's certainly more informed about it. I think that Netanyahu has to be stopped. This government has to be called to task by the people that send them checks, and that's the United States government primarily. And this is a war criminal. This is a madman, and this is a murderer, and that's the bottom line. So when you look at the macro of the history of whether or not there should have been Israel and whether Zionism is at its core a good and pure thing or whether it's misguided, those are conversations to have. What matters now is that this man and his government are murdering people every single day, and that has to stop. And an end has to be put to that, because those other conversations have been going on since Israel's founding and beforehand, and they're important and they're certainly fascinating, and I love having them. But I don't think they matter now. What matters now is that you have to stop a murderer. There's a mass murderer in town, and we gotta stop him. And that sounds base, but that supersedes everything else.
Yeah, I just want to point out real quick. I remember on a different show when we were discussing Gaza, someone had commented and said that every time TYT covers Gaza, we always have to use clips from news programs in Europe or the Middle East. And it's so telling that even after this has been going on for so long, American media just cannot call a thing out for what it is. And I did mention earlier that someone like Kapos doesn't have a political agenda in speaking out against the actions of Israel, but I will amend that a little bit. It is political in the sense that everything is political in that it affects people's lives. His political agenda is to protect and preserve innocent lives that are currently being slaughtered on behalf of someone else's political agenda. So either way, whatever this is, if compassion is political, which I personally think it is, then this man is a strong political voice that we so very desperately need right now. And he's incredibly credible. Incredibly credible is what I was trying to say.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.